Greetings, everyone. This is the International Council for Small Business. My name is Ayman El Tarabishy. I'm the President and CEO of the International Council for Small Business. I'm also Deputy Chair of the Department of Management at the GW School of Business. And we are delighted to have you here. It's September, so a lot of us are back in school. I want to wish you all a very successful September to December timeframe with school and work and everything you're doing. I hope you all are staying safe as well with your families here. And we are excited with this program of ours we kicked it off yesterday with Arts and Entrepreneurship. And today we're going to do an inside look at the Journal of Small Business Management. But before we start, I want to introduce warmly Dr. Eric Liguori. He is the Rohrer Professorial Chair in Entrepreneurship and Executive Director of the Rowan Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. He is also the ICSB JSBM co-managing editor, and we are just excited to have him being on the JSBM as a managing editor here. He is exceptional, and I call him Superman with the amount of work that he's doing and everything that he's doing with ICSB here. So I'm really appreciative of him. I called him last week. I proposed this idea for him, and he said absolutely. And thank you very much, Eric, for jumping in and kicking this off with us here, with everybody that's joining us. The session will be recorded, so it's going to go to over 30,000 of ICSB contacts around the world to introduce you to the journal, what we're planning to do, some of the exciting things that Eric and Dr. Katia Passerini has been working on as well. So, and without further ado, Eric, the floor is yours. I want to personally thank you again for all your hard work with ICSB and the journal. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Ivan, for arranging this and for setting it up. I know I speak for Katia and myself. We're so excited to continue to build on the great legacy JSBM has and to continue to help grow and scale the journal in ways that impact practice and contribute to theory and really help advance the field in a variety of new ways. The journal has been under the leadership of George Solomon for several years, and George has just done incredible things to help transform the journal and get us to where we are today. And so we're really excited to take the baton and continue moving JSBM forward and expanding the impact of the journal and the organization as a whole. So Ayman and the ICSB board, thank you all for the opportunity to serve. I'll tell you just some quick fast facts. And these are things that neither Katia or myself can take any credit for, but things that are actually kind of cool, and it shows you kind of where the journal is today and some of the exciting things going on. We've got a highly competitive journal. We accept 8 to 10% of papers that come in off of 800 or so submissions annually. The impact factor, I think 3, 4, 5 years growing now, continues to increase, jumped another half point for 2019 to 3.6, and we are actively working to continue to build that even further. We're a 3 ranking on the Chartered Association of Business Schools list, an A ranking on the Australian Business Dean's Council list. We're a top 10 journal for tech and innovation, global distribution and readership from over 60 countries. And we have a really inclusive aims and scope that looks at a lot of different aspects of not just small business, but also entrepreneurship. And so it's a really kind of exciting journal to watch because we relate to a lot of fields. The one thing I think I want people to really take away, if nothing else from our conversation today, is the journal does value very much that so what factor. So if we're publishing academic research, we want to be looking at how does that translate into informing practice? How does that help an entrepreneur do their job better? How do we contribute to the literature as a whole? Sure, is very important and very critical to the journal, but we're actually looking for authors to also bridge to translation a little bit. And so definitely something that the journal has long discussed and long promoted, and something that we're actively continuing to work with and work towards. I put together a couple different slides here to talk about kind of what's going on at JSBM and how our process for submitting, receiving, and reviewing papers works. Ayman and Katia and I have been working. We've reviewed about 3,500 submission decisions that have come in over the last 5 years to really identify the trends and what's happening with papers that go through sort of the journal process. Excuse me. And I know when I look at the list of just people on the call with us right now, I see a lot of familiar names and I see a lot of new names. I see names for people who've published in the journal in the past. I see names of people who actively have papers under review or revision right now. And I see names of people that I hope will consider submitting to the journal in the future. And so definitely an exciting audience with us today. So thank you all for making time to join us. We've kind of structured our manuscript review process along 5 steps. And our goal right now is to be able to get through from submission to first decision on manuscripts that come in a 60 to 75 day window. We're still truing up some of those, but by and large, we should be hitting that 60 to 75 day window. So if you submit to the journal, you should be able to expect a first decision within 2 to 2.5 months. Straight up, the first thing that we do is we do a review for formatting. We make sure the manuscript, meets the standards the journal needs for going out for blind peer review, make sure the files are where they need to be, make sure that the work is original and isn't flagging for any reason there, and just make sure that the writing is clear enough that it would make sense for it to go forward in the peer review process. It then comes to Katia and I, and we go through and make sure that it fits within the aims and scope of the journal. We review the cover letter to kind of identify what the author's take on their paper is and what the contribution is and where they're going with it. We look at the manuscript as a whole and ultimately assign it out to one of our team members, one of the associate editors, who's ultimately going to lead the peer review process. They'll then take the paper. They'll review the cover letter. They will review the manuscript itself, and they'll go ahead and identify peer reviewers and get it sent out, get those people invited, and get that process moving along. Ultimately, once those peer reviews come back, they'll review the feedback, they'll review the paper again, and then they'll make a decision whether or not we're going to proceed with consideration of it at the journal. And so we've got a 5-step process. Obviously, steps 1, 2, and 3 happen relatively quickly within days. Usually step 4 is what takes the most time, right? Getting it out for peer review, getting those peer review scores back, and ultimately making a decision. And so we definitely have a pretty streamlined process, and we're actively managing the timeline on it. And I just have to give a quick shout out to Hannah Gilroy, who's helping on the editorial side, who's doing an amazing job to help make sure that all of our systems and processes run in a really smooth way so that we can hit this timeline and not delay publication of work or review or consideration of work when authors are submitting. As I go through and look at it and talking with Ayman and Katia, we really, in analyzing these submissions, came up with sort of 5 reasons why we're seeing papers get desk rejected. So again, we looked at about 5 years worth of data. That's 3,500 or so submissions. And there were really kind of 5 categories. So the first was just concerns of originality. Is the work that's being presented new, novel? Are there things on the software side that are detecting plagiarism or originality concerns, or even self-plagiarism concerns? Those are kind of red flags for us, and we want to make sure that we're putting forward original work when we are only able to publish such a small percentage of what comes in anyways. That originality piece becomes really important to us. We look at papers that get submitted that might not be the best from a topical perspective. And so things like innovations in consumer behavior research. Yes, there's that weak connection to entrepreneurship and innovation, but it's really not a great fit within the aims and scope of our journal. So we do see papers that come in that might be on the fringe that just don't quite meet the threshold for being a good fit for what we're looking to publish. Failure to follow submission guidelines. This is usually related to a couple of different factors. It could be that the paper comes in and it's 85 pages long. We had one of those a week or 2 ago, and it was just way over the length limit that we're able to include. And there's some solutions to that, and we worked with those authors around options there. things that, impact the blindness really make it hard. So if you don't follow the submission guidelines to make sure that the work is set up to be able to go out for a blind peer review, we've got to go through that process there. So there's a few different reasons in there that might not be fatal flaws or have anything to do with the paper, but if it doesn't conform to what the journal is putting together, then we've got to address that in some way, shape, or form. Rigor, and really this comes down to sort of two things. One, at that review process, either the editor or the editorial office just detected that there's major methodological limitations here, like you either didn't explain your methodology at all, or there's significant limitations that are just kind of glaring that cause us to have to go down this path, or there's just a lack of a theoretical connection or foundation, or even so much as a lit review sufficiency issue that's coming up. And so we're trying to identify those things, because when we send papers out that are lacking in these regards, it frustrates the reviewer pool, and it's not a good use of time or resources. And so we're trying to make sure that work that we do send out for review hits some of these basic fundamental building blocks that we need to see in a paper to consider it further for publication. And last is, prior or concurrent consideration. I mean, if you submit something to JSBM, we want it to be something that only we are reviewing at this time. So try to make sure that you're not submitting to more than one journal at once. That kind of goes without saying, but also when you're submitting to the journal, because we do get so many submissions, make sure that you follow some of these other considerations, because once something is rejected, we typically aren't able to consider it again just because of bandwidth and the number of submissions the journal gets. And so, making sure that you maximize that first bite at the apple becomes increasingly important. Kind of in tandem with looking at why papers were getting kind of pushed out or desk rejected once they were submitted, we looked at what are the types of things that can help authors set their work up for success when it comes into the journal. And so these are the sort of 5 things that we came up with as we went through it that seemed really important here. And one is, you just saw the checklist of those 5 reasons why we're commonly desk rejecting certain papers, avoiding the ones that are avoidable, getting the formatting right, making sure that your methodology is clear, making sure that you have a theoretical foundation. Doing these small things can really help maximize the odds that it's going to go out for peer review. Don't underestimate the importance of the letter to the editor. So again, we get 800 submissions a year. We can publish roughly 50. We average at 8 to 10% acceptance rate. So your letter to the editor is really your pitch. A lot of times we'll get a letter to the editor that says something along the lines of, "Dear editor, please accept my work titled, ABC :XYZ for consideration in your journal. Thanks, the authors." And that really doesn't do anything to sell the editorial office or the associate editor on the value of the paper, the contribution of the paper, how the paper fits within the literature, how the paper fits within the aims and scope of the journal. And so we're looking for authors to help articulate the value of their work, the meaningfulness and the impact of it, how it fits within the journal, within a broader conversation, within the journal in the field, how it can inform practice. Like, these are really important things. And it's your chance to put your best foot forward and to tell us and to educate us so we don't have to guess. Because if we have to guess, we might not guess right. And so making sure that you put some time into that letter to the editor really becomes important. Getting the introduction right, this has become one of the fastest growing things I think we've seen in feedback that's come back from peer reviewers is a request for work to reconsider and revise the introduction. I think now more than ever, with the growth in entrepreneurship research and the number of scholars doing work in this space, the number of journals considering work in this space, really grabbing attention early on, setting that hook straight up when you get into that first couple of paragraphs, connecting it to the literature, conveying the impact of the work becomes more important than ever. I know I was reading an article out of AMR a couple weeks ago that was talking about how to sort of approach this. And I believe those authors said, you know, they rewrote the introduction to that editorial 10 times. And I'm not saying that anyone needs to rewrite their introduction 10 times. I'm saying that everyone might want to make sure that the introduction version that they're using is what what they think is putting the best light on their paper, what's moving that paper forward in the best way. And that might be 2 times, that might be 7 times, that might be 17 times. I won't predict that for anyone, but it sure seems like there's a lot of reviewers coming back asking scholars to rework their introduction. And I know that I've been as guilty of that as anybody in papers that I've worked on. You write an introduction kind of up front, then you go deep dive into methodology and results and conclusions and implications, and then you revise that a few different ways. Your data goes in a direction that might be a little bit different. And sometimes I don't always think to go back and reframe my introduction to match the rest of the paper. And I think that we're seeing that become more of a trend. Conforming to best practices for research design and data collection and analysis. JSBM has published a few papers. We have another couple coming out soon around this, but as have a lot of other journals in the family business, small business, entrepreneurship space. And even broader than that, if you want kind of a best practice book, Herman Aquinas' website lays out all of his work, and he does a lot of work in the social science space, not just specifically to entrepreneurship, but talking about some of the best practices for research design and data collection and analysis. And so making sure more than anything, rigor matters, but clarity seems to be the biggest point of contention with some of the reviewers. They don't feel that there's been adequate clarity provided around what was done from the research design, data collection, and analysis perspective. And then last, and I said this kind of straight up front, and I wanted to bring it back full circle again at the end, creating practical value. And so I definitely think that the journal is one that has always valued this so what factor. This goes back a couple of decades, and is one that comes up quite a bit. For a period of time, we even asked reviewers to weigh in on the specific so what nature of the paper, but how does this paper facilitate translation or inform practice or contribute to some population of people that might be slightly broader than just an academic audience? How does it help an entrepreneur? How does it help a policymaker? Are there ways that we can use this work to help inform the field more broadly? So overall, those are kind of the 3 areas: the best practices, the workflow process that the journal is using, and the reasons we're seeing papers get desk rejected. I know that we are about 60 days into taking over JSBM, and we're learning every day, and we're continuing to triage and work with authors. We've got just some amazing work in the pipeline. I'm so excited to see it coming through. Some amazing scholars, both established and emerging. And so it's just every day you can log into the JSBM editor portal, and I look at it and I see a different paper and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's cool. And so I'm really excited to see continued growth in the journal and to serve you all in this new role. And I'm glad to answer any questions that you might have if you want to throw them in the chat.
Great, Eric. Thank you very much. This is really helpful here. Let me start with some questions right here. Just talk a little bit about the type of papers being submitted. You mentioned a couple of times we get a lot of these type of papers coming in on entrepreneurship, education, or family business. Maybe if you talk a little bit about what you see as tendencies as the topics, the popular topics or papers that are coming into JSBM, that will give you an idea and kind of things that you like to see more of, so people can get more ideas of kind of saying, this is stuff of the research that JSBM is always interested in looking at more and more of.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think I said at the beginning, we have a very intentionally inclusive aims and scope for the journal. And so small business and entrepreneurship kind of broadly defined. That said, we do tend to get papers maybe disproportionately skewed towards certain areas. I think over the years, we've published a lot of work on SMEs. We get a lot of submissions around SMEs, and these are SMEs in a lot of different ways, whether it's with a marketing take on it, whether it's with a public policy take on it. There's a lot of work either focused on SMEs or revolving around data connected to SMEs. And so I would say that's probably our number one submission area. We're starting to see a lot more work in family business. We've been one of few journals that has accepted work around entrepreneurship education, so we still do get a fair number of submissions there. In fact, one of the publishers ran an analysis about 3 years back and said that the majority of the top cited work in entrepreneurship education was published in JSBM, which I thought was kind of a cool statistic. Technology and innovation. We just reviewed a paper that was talking about the top like 30 journals or 40 journals for technology and innovation, and JSBM was in the top 10 for journals that have published work in that regard, and quite a bit of work actually in that sense. So definitely an active flow of papers there. We're leading the way in some of the more emerging topics in the field. I know JSBM has been an early sort of pioneer around humane entrepreneurship and work around social entrepreneurship, maybe even more broadly. So definitely a variety of topics, but I don't know that just because I didn't mention your topic today, it would be in any way fair to think that it's not a fit for the journal. And if you have a specific topic, you can always email Ayman or Kadia or I. We'd be glad to offer some thoughts on suitability.
Great, thank you. Why don't we open up for questions, kind of like the questions I asked here. If you have any questions or even better, even ideas of things that you're looking into or you're interested in, please let us know, because now it's a time to actually brainstorm together. And Nigel, I'm going to pick on you, Ivana, and Tom as well. You know, some of the things that you could think of here, saying, hey, you know, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Because you never know. One of those ideas might be something that we are even thinking about now, and you mention it, so that kind of triangulates, kind of saying, well, you know, it's coming. People are mentioning it as well. So, any ideas or suggestions? Yeah, why don't I do this? Hold on. I'm going to do something second here. I'm going to actually do something cool here. Let me just do this. Nigel, I'm going to give you allowed to talk. Nigel, I just gave you audio so you can speak. And then Moses, I know you, Moses. I'm going to do this. And Ovana, I'm going to open it up for everybody. So if you want, now you have mic access, guys.
Unmute, okay. Hi, hi Eric. It's been a couple of years since we last met.
I know. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm all right. We're on had entertaining times with lockdown, but we're fighting our way through. We, of course, unlike you who are having a lovely summer, we're actually still working in the University of Buckingham because we're stupid enough to run 4 terms a year, and we're doing it all online. So you can imagine for a poor grey-haired old fellow like me, it's quite entertaining. I'm, of course, carry on my usual rant about venture creation programs, Eric. As you know, myself and Doan and Norris and a few others sort of keep trying to persuade people to have a go at what we've been doing for the last 15 years, but it doesn't seem to pick up, despite, you know, Martin Lacaeus and a few other people trying to promote it. Even Norwegians are having a go now. The NTNU in Trondheim. I've got a research project on venture creation programs all around the world, but they're having challenges finding any.
Finding venture creation programs or finding outlets to publish work around venture creation?
Well, finding the venture creation programs to do some research on, to compare them around the world and see. Again, they're well known in on postgraduate level or master's level, obviously in Colorado, and lots of other people are doing it for a long time, but very few at undergraduate level like us. I mean, we're stupid enough to have a go at undergraduate, as you know.
You know, I think you remember Ayman said this was recorded and being shared with people in 60 countries, Nigel. So
my friends in Trondheim will be very pleased, especially these young ladies trying to do research into it. They'd be very pleased.
Absolutely. And I saw that actually, they just put a call out for a special issue and a peer journal of ours around it. I made a note of it myself because I thought it was an interesting call for papers.
It is probably very niche, of course, I recognize, Eric, and it is probably, it's not something everybody can have a go at, I know, because of various restrictions. Absolutely. And of course, big universities trying to do something like this would be very difficult.
Absolutely. Well, I think you're working with some of the right people. I mean, if it's going on in that space around the globe and Doan or Norris or Martin don't know about it, then, I don't know who else to even suggest talking to. From a suitability with JSBM, I mean, I do think that we would consider and look at publishing work in this space. It very much fits within the special issue we have running right now around mindset with USASB. It very much fits with some of the prior work, including Martin's work and Doan's work that we've published in JSBM before. I mean, definitely as this work evolves, we'd love to see it submitted to the journal. And I mean, I'm glad to talk offline, but anything I can do to help, connect you to other programs, I'd be glad to do as well. I guess the question would almost become how narrowly or broadly are you defining a venture creation program? But I don't know that we need to get into that.
Absolutely. Well, it's always a definition comment. We are trying to we are actually having a go at trying to do what Norris always wants to do, to get some numbers in place. And there's some research being supported by the enterprise educators in the UK, which my colleague Matt Rogers-Draycott and a team from various universities are having a go at. But again, they are having challenges as well, getting enough people to be involved because of the small numbers of people who do it.
Yeah, I think I think part of it, Nigel, is it's one of those fields where, and we ran into this with Martin in a special issue we did a couple of years ago as well. Just the terms that we use to define and operationalize things in Europe versus Asia versus
absolutely
don't always quite like parallel one another for sure.
It's like Americans and English being split by one language, isn't it, really?
Very true.
Thank you, Nigel. I got
Thank
a question.
You very much for the time.
Absolutely. Eric, I have a question from Josh. What is the average number of review rounds before an acceptance? I know that ETP has restricted the R&R to only one round now. Does JSBM have a similar policy now?
We don't. I don't think that we ever want to see things getting to 3 and 4 and 5, right? But the flip side is we want to make sure we get it right. And we're getting more and more papers that come with lots more supporting documentation. And it's an education process, I think, to get authors to start using that online supplemental option. And so a lot of times what we'll get is, we might get a really long paper, it goes through the review process, everybody likes it. And then we have to add, say, a third round of R&R because we need to restructure it enough to pull some of the supporting documentation that might be supplemental, but not directly necessary in that copy edited version of the paper into an online supplemental component. And so we're having to use that a little bit in that regard to navigate, specific issues around that. But by and large, I think the majority of decisions happen, if not after the first round, definitely after the second. I don't, we review every submission when it comes in for each round, and it's very rare that I see a submission number or manuscript number with a .R3. So it's very rare that it gets to the third round, and usually there's a nuanced reason. And it could be something as simple as like one that I sent out 2 days ago where, it came in after that second round, all the reviewers liked it, but the title was, way too long. And so the entire revision was, hey, we're going to change the title, or we just need to shorten the title up a little bit.
Yeah.
If we get to the third round, it's pretty quick.
Good. Yeah, I agree. This is a good question here, and maybe you can explain it a little bit here. It comes from Io Dole. Eric says introduction is important. Can Eric explain what do you mean by the introduction? What do you look at for the introduction to convey it here? It's a tricky question, but it's very clear cut. Maybe you want to expand a little bit on this so people understand.
Well, I think that if you give me 1 second, let me pull that up. This article. So we're in the process right now. Ayman and Kadi and I have putting together an editorial that should come out on early site here relatively soon, but should hit in the January issue. And we talk about that in a lot more detail in there, and we offer some examples. I'm trying to think, it might be 2011, but there's a Grant and Pollock AMR article that talks about sort of setting the stage and building the right hook and laying out sort of the foundations of what that looks like. The reason we stumbled on this article, because I hadn't seen it before myself, was actually it came up in a lot of peer reviews. We saw certain reviewers just citing it and saying, hey, check this out, look at this paper. And it does a really nice job of laying it out. So it's Grant and Pollock, I think it's 2011 AMR. If you email me, I can send it to you. But we do have an editorial coming out that expands on that a little bit further, and that should be up in the next 60 days on early site and out in full in January.
Good. Desiree says you mentioned somebody about research design. You mentioned an author about research design.
Yeah, I was, well, you know, there's a lot of papers out right now that talk about research design in social sciences, in management, in entrepreneurship, more specifically. So, I mean, I think there's definitely no shortage. We summarize, I think, 4 or 5 that come up in that editorial in general. And, you know, essentially, you know, I guess the 4, and again, we pulled all of these were data driven, right? So all of these insights we pulled out of reviewers. JSBM works off of a top 100 reviewer list. We looked at those reviewers in particular and what were those people saying. And so 2 of the papers were by Herman Aquinas. If I'm saying that correctly, I mean, if I'm not, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, Herman Aquinas, yep.
But Herman publishes all of his work on his website, so it's very accessible and very easy to download. So, you know, he has one where he's talking about detailed best practices for data collection and preparation. It's Aquinas, Hill, and Bailey, 2019. And he talks specifically for quantitative and qualitative data sets, which is a really important distinction for us because we publish work in both spaces. And he's got a great checklist for data collection and recommendations for preparation in there. And so that's a really sort of tactical paper to look at. If you look at Bernerth and Aquinas, they talk about improving transparency and appropriateness of practices with regard to control variable usage. And so there's been a lot of attention recently in the literature talking about the suitability and appropriateness of using certain control variables. And we're seeing reviewers start to be more critical and pay a lot more attention to that. Common method variance, common method bias still comes up quite a bit. And so just following contemporary practices there, whether you're in support of that being a problem or not, because there are a couple different sides to that coin. There are some testing considerations that can be done, as well as ways to just address or prevent the challenge from a research design standpoint. And then if you're looking specifically at quantitative research, Mala and Stam 2019 also forward a great table that talks about specific recommendations to strengthen rigor in quantitative work in entrepreneurship specifically. So those are the 4 that we identified that came up several times throughout our top 100 reviews for 2019.
Wonderful. Case studies. We do not allow case studies on JSBM, right? So we don't do what's the position on? I know we don't do case studies, but have we? I don't think we have talked about yet allowing some of the case studies.
Yeah, we don't typically publish a case study, but we do publish work that uses cases as the sample or the data set, right? So I mean, yep. We've seen papers that, you know, they're like, all right, we studied these 5 cases and these 5 companies, we wrote up cases on it, we did an analysis, blah, blah, blah. We've done that, but we don't typically publish just like a case study on X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions, comments, anybody, any ideas as well? Here, let me quickly ask in the chat section here, maybe see if you guys have it here. How many of you, when you do research, go to ICSB for the journal information, or do you go to your library for it? How many of you use the ICSB JSBM site to access the articles, or how many of you go to your actual library here? If you put it in the chat section here, it's something for me would like to know. And the reason I'm asking you this is we're about to roll out the JSBM online access for our members worldwide here. So something that will be coming shortly on our ICSB site. So if you can answer that, that'll be great here. And the other question I want to ask Eric here is, okay, so Dennis uses a library database here. And Eric, as we move forward with the journal and as we move forward with this, talk a little bit about the associate editors that you're looking for and the reviewers that you are looking for here. So because these people that are online here today have their networks and have friends that have networks and so on. So what are you looking for? So as we build our team, what are you looking for?
Oh, sure. So, I mean, we have a diverse array of associate editors from around the world and some just amazing scholars. And we're structuring the terms around the AEs so that they're staggered, so that we don't lose too many at one point in time, and so that we have a continual sort of diverse representation of editors. And so if you have an interest yourself, or if you know colleagues who might be interested in getting involved, have them shoot me an email, have them shoot Ayman an email. We'll be glad to talk to them, look at ways for them to engage in the journal. If they've never reviewed for the journal or published in the journal before, those are usually good sort of starting points to engage with us and get to know us. And if you've been reviewing for us for a while and the reviews are going well, and you have published in the journal before and published in other similar journals, then we can look at having another conversation. We did just add one new associate editor who is a bit more of a junior scholar, but has just been a rock star publisher and a killer reviewer for the journal. And we did that on a trial basis. And so we said, why don't we have you work with one of our AEs now for 120 days, shadow them, help them, support them, see how it goes, see how you feel, and then we'll reconvene after that period and see if this might be a fit or not. So we're definitely always looking for new talent on the reviewer side and the editor side. But we're, trying to make sure that we make responsible decisions in that regard as well.
That's good. Thank you here. So most of them are using the library site, but I'm telling Sumit and everybody here, soon on the ICSB website, if you are a member, you'll get access to the online, the JSBM Online with Taylor and Francis here. As mentioned, Moses, as Eric mentioned, and as well, right? We are in the process of kind of relooking at our associate editors, looking at this and looking into expanding our reviewer database, reviewers and our junior associate editors, if you may, using that language here. So we're in the midst of rebuilding or recreating, and we're very excited with this here. Any other questions or comments coming in? I see there's a new question that popped in. Let me see, there's one here. Okay, so no, Desiree just answered the university library here. Here's one. Eric, what's the plans for next year when it comes to special issues? What's in the horizon that we're working on that we know we already have in the pipeline? Talk a little bit preview of what's coming next year with different themes and stuff that we're doing here, so people can have an idea for it.
Sure. We have actually quite a few special issues underway right now that we're in the process of launching. In fact, just today, the new drop-down menu in the submission system went live with all of our current issues and soon to be live special issues included in there. I'm just pulling up that spreadsheet now. I'm in.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
So many different topics. And so we have, oh, wrong spreadsheet, sorry.
No.
Special issues, here we go. So we've got some great ones coming on. We have one on small business financing that Giancarlo Giudice, Ariely, and Howard Van Auken are working on. That one should be out in February, so I think we're past the point of submitting to it, but definitely one of the ones that's coming out next year. There's one around creative qualitative methods. I know someone posted in the chat around, are there any types of methodology that we're not open to? We don't draw blanket statements like that. Those are really hard things to do, because the minute you do it, someone comes up with something new that's amazing. And so no, there's not, that is something that we would just say absolutely not to, because of what it is. We're actually running a special issue on creative qualitative approaches to look at modern research challenges, and that's being led by a few different people, including Elaine Fayol and Bill Gartner. So some awesome scholars there. I think we have maybe 2 or so more weeks left to submit to the special issue on humane entrepreneurship, led by Roberto Parente and Keyshawn Kim. That should be out end of next year. We have one around entrepreneurial mindset that Ben McClarty and Jeff Hornsby are working on with me. One around state-of-the-art reviews and small business and entrepreneurship research, and that's really around bibliographic work, meta-analyses, and structured literature reviews. And that's Sasha Krausch, Raj Maddow, and Steve Walsh putting that one together. One around entrepreneurial process that's being led by Bill Jackson and includes Laura Castraldi and Lou Marino, Diego Matriciano. Entrepreneurial marketing with Yang Wan and a few others. And one around resilience that is Peter, I can't say his last name, I messed it up. Peter at Duquesne University, Giannatis, and there's a great team working with Peter on that. And I'm drawing a blank on the name. David Aldrich and a few others. And so there's definitely over the next 24 to 36 months, quite a few special issues underway and in the works. And so we did just put together a new sort of frequently asked questions list for people considering submitting a special issue proposal. And I can share that with anyone who's interested if you just shoot me an email. But I would say that we're probably on a 6-month pause, barring something changing, from being able to accept any new ones because we have so many great ones underway at the moment. And Ayman is actively working with the publisher to explore opportunities to continue to grow in this way. And so we're optimistic that we'll be able to continue to accommodate a good number of special issues over time.
Thank you, Eric, very much. So as you can see, we have a lot of work that was done before that we're going to continue to do here. We're working very hard to continue and actually to build here. So the key here to the success is your partnership, your support, your understanding, and also to continuously give us feedback here. So one of the ways that we are doing this with you all is we're going to start this monthly series with the JSBM. So you get to talk to Eric, you get to talk to me, you get to talk to Katya. Soon we'll bring in the associate editors as well. We'll bring in the reviewers here, and we'll continuously announce that we're going to have these meetings, JSBM meetings online, like we do today, and we collectively work together to co-create this new JSBM here. So go ahead.
I'll jump in there because that you just raised a great point. I think you're going to see a lot more dynamic content coming out of JSBM and ICSB as we move forward. And one of the things is we're going to start, doing a better job of sharing the story of some of the research and the impact that's coming out of the journal. So as work is getting accepted, we're going to start working with those authors to help them spread the word and to feature their work and to engage in a more multimedia friendly way with the readership of the journal and the organization. And so I think that we want to push very hard in this direction and to be kind of bold in this direction and to be a bit of a thought leader in how work is not just disseminated through a traditional library subscription model, but also through a more social, dynamic, and engaging medium as well.
And absolutely. So we'll give you some ideas. Well, Eric is starting, so we'll give you some ideas of what we're planning to do. If you have published with JSBM within the last 6 months, you're eligible to get an ICSB JSBM badge that you can put on your profile page, on your LinkedIn page or your university page. So you'll get that. You'll get a certificate from us saying that you have published with JSBM, and we'll put the title of your paper there, and you'll have it, and you can put it part of your online presence, saying, here's what I have done here. And that's something to show you that we are part of this new world here, and we need you to recognize this and people to recognize this. And so you will be getting this from us, and we'll be going to communicate this with you all here for you to spread the word here. And that's what it is. It's this community building. I call it the ICSB family here. So new knowledge is needed here. So with that, Eric is doing, as I mentioned earlier, he's doing a fantastic job just kind of with the transition. But once we finish with the transition and we're ready to go, we're going to be very dynamic. We're going to move first. I'll give you some ideas. People that have submitted, that got their papers accepted and published, we're going to bring them in for online webinars to ask the question, saying, what was What was the reason behind this paper? What made you think of this paper? What are some of the challenges that you had from a methodology standpoint? What about the reviewers? What worked? What didn't work? What was happening here? So it'll be live, it will be interactive here. And then we're going to ask people saying, well, you know, some of the papers that have been downloaded a lot, because we keep track of all this stuff, we'll bring in the authors and we ask them, you know, so this is the impact here, but we know this, we read it, but give us the conspiracy theory behind it. What was behind all of this, right? And these are the type of conversations that we're going to have. JSBM is going to be I call it a cutting edge journal here that brings high impact research with the so what question answered here, but also pushing the envelope for more cutting edge research here. So that's what we're hoping for. And with Eric and Katya's leadership here, and we're in for a great, great future here. And I really appreciate them both here.
Yeah, I'm grateful. So cool to see so many familiar names on here and people who have, you know, Indu, hey, it's great to see you, albeit somewhat virtually. Colleen, your office is right upstairs, so I hope you something together for that entrepreneurial marketing special issue. Tom, thanks for posting the Grant and Pollock work in the chat, those elements for the introduction. That's really helpful. Moses, yes, conceptual work for sure. This is going to be a good opportunity to continue to engage an amazing group of scholars, Ayman, and I think we're really set up for success here.
Wonderful. With that, I don't want to keep you all. There's probably a million other things you all want to do. I want to thank you all for joining us today. We're going to be posting this on the JSBM website, and we're going to be sharing it out with our global family worldwide here. I want to thank Eric as well, again, for his time and effort and with his busy start of the semester here. But I want to thank everybody here. Have a wonderful and safe day. Tomorrow, we're going to start with another webinar called Society 5.0. with Dr. Ilyas Kiryanis here. He's also an editor of 2 journals here. So we'll send out an invitation this. So we're going to have some editors coming in talking about their journals as well as part of the ICSB family. So we're excited to have you all here. Take care. We see you next month with another JSBM series here. And thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Eric. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks all.
Bye-bye.